So is the argument that the Keystone XL pipeline will create tens of thousands of new jobs just a pipe dream? To discuss this and more, Patrick Hedger, policy analyst for FreedomWorks, joins us now. Patrick, thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me.
I want to start off by highlighting some key points in this Cornell study.
Sure.
We have a graphic that kind of illustrates this. First off, the project will create, according to this study, no more than 4,650 temporary, that is a key word there, temporary construction jobs for 2 years. And this is according to TransCanada's own data supplied to the State Department. The companies claim that the pipeline will create 20,000 direct construction and manufacturing jobs in the U.S. They say is not substantiated. Another argument there is that there is strong evidence to suggest that most of the material for the pipeline will not even be produced inside of the United States. So, Patrick, if this Cornell study is indeed true, does that kind of weaken this argument to move forward with the Keystone pipeline? Because one of the big arguments you're hearing time and time again is that this is going to create some much-needed jobs.
Yeah, and I think that proponents of the Keystone pipeline, and I believe that the pipeline should go ahead and be built, but not because of the job figures. I think that the energy sector and the proponents of the Keystone pipeline are doing themselves a real disservice by relying on jobs figures to allow for the passage of the Keystone pipeline to be built in the United States. We've got this big problem in this country where we keep linking energy markets to job markets, and we're saying, oh, we should build this because it'll create jobs. Things shouldn't be built. Energy infrastructure shouldn't be built because it creates jobs. It should be built because it creates energy. And that's what the Keystone XL pipeline is going to do. It's going to bring 800,000 barrels of oil into the United States every day. And that's oil that will be sent to... It's going to be burned. It's going to be used. Whether it's being burned here and used in American infrastructure or it's being burned by Chinese infrastructure, that oil is going to be sold given the high price of oil.
Okay, but one of the main arguments that we do hear in favor of this pipeline is the fact that it's going to create tens of thousands of new jobs. Are you saying it's irrelevant? It doesn't matter whether or not that argument is true?
Absolutely. I do think that's an irrelevant argument. The main argument here is that we have a free society and supposedly a free market economy. The State Department report that came out this March, not 2 years ago, came out this month, stated that this would be a safe pipeline. It meets 57 different regulations that are set out by the Department of Transportation's Specialized Pipeline and Hazmat unit. So if it's meeting the safety standards, if the federal government is deeming it safe, then in a free and open economy, American businessmen and cooperating with Canadian business interests should be free to build their infrastructure and sell their product.
Now, speaking of safe, another thing that this study, the Cornell study, did point out is that rising carbon emissions and other pollutants from the heavy crude in this type of oil that is being transported through the Keystone XL pipeline will also incur increased health care costs. So these emissions also increase both the risk and costs of further climate instability. So it brings in health problems. What about that risk?
Well, I mean, we can't keep limiting ourselves and limiting our society based on tens of thousands of a percentage point what-if scenarios. And we're assuming that first of all, they're assuming that the pipeline will leak. They're assuming that there will be some sort of disaster with the pipeline. There are 55,000 miles of pipelines already existing in the United States. This would be an 875-mile pipeline that would be built. We're already operating thousands of miles of safe pipelines in the United States, burning oil. And there are other studies out there that calculated that the total carbon emissions, assuming that the climate science is correct, the total carbon emissions would only increase global temperatures on average by within 100,000ths of a degree centigrade. And that's just that's not substantial enough to keep limiting ourselves and limiting a free economy.
I think one of the arguments also is the fact tar sands is particularly not clean energy.
Right.
What about that?
Well, that's where the studies that I've read have talked about, that the increased carbon emissions, 15 to 20% dirtier, I guess, to burn tar sands oil versus conventional oil drilled and deep oil drills. That the added burn, which it'll be burned here or it'll be burned in China, regardless if this pipeline is built, would only add a very minuscule level of temperature and a minuscule amount of carbon to the atmosphere.
So you think that all these environmental concerns, all these health concerns are just environmentalists blowing the whole thing out of proportion, that they're unsubstantiated?
Well, They are unsubstantiated because regardless, with the price of oil right now, the Canadians are going to sell it. And there are already Canadian business interests that are trying to latch onto this opportunity being artificially created by the Obama administration's hesitation to allow the pipeline, that are willing to build pipelines to the Pacific Ocean. And when that happens, this oil is going to get on Chinese-built tankers and be shipped to China and burned there. Is that what we're really willing to risk, or do we want to burn this oil here, use it here, and use it safely using American technology?
Well, I do want to get back to the issue of jobs because that is what this Cornell study is about, and it brings up this other really interesting finding. It says that it will actually, this Keystone XL pipeline will actually kill more jobs than create jobs, and that is because it's traveling through these areas where their industry is relying on agriculture and things like that. So what about that? That it could actually hurt the economy. Not only will it not create jobs, it could kill more jobs.
Once again, we have to detach the jobs argument, positive or negative, from the energy argument. We're producing energy infrastructure in order to produce energy, not to save jobs, not to create jobs. It's to meet the demand of energy in the market. And once again, I read through the study, a lot of these endangerment findings for jobs in these areas are once again contingent on the off chance that disaster strikes. And we can't keep continuing.
What about BP? I mean, didn't that prove that disaster can in fact strike? Disaster
does strike, but would we have ever put a man on the moon if we were afraid of disaster striking? Would we have ever built the Empire State Building, built the Hoover Dam, built some of the great things in American society and the things that we're proud of and accomplished if we were afraid of the what-if scenarios of the danger?
But isn't it good to do everything that you can to prevent these what-if scenarios from happening and raise all these questions?
Well, that's not the job of the government. Once the government deems it safe, and once the government says that this should be built, there's no reason that we should object to this being built. When the State Department says that, it's not the job of the U.S. government to come in and say what free people acting in a free economy can do.
All right, Patrick, appreciate you coming on. That was Patrick Hedger, a policy analyst for FreedomWorks.